Welcome to the New to Jesus podcast, where we find foundational truths to help you take your first steps in your walk with Christ.
Hey, this is Dan Bergman. Welcome back to the New to Jesus podcast. And in this episode, we're going to get back into the book of Genesis. We're going to look at Genesis chapter 9. Now, if you remember correctly, we just ended the flood. They had gotten off the ark. Noah and his family, his sons and their wives, were safe. And in Genesis chapter 9, we're introduced to the Noahic covenant. It says in verse 1, "And God blessed Noah and his sons, and said unto them, Be fruitful and multiply and replenish the earth." And so God is telling Noah and his sons to repopulate the earth. It says, "And the fear of you and the dread of you shall be upon every beast of the earth, and upon every fowl of the air, upon all that moveth upon the earth, and upon all of the fishes of the sea. Into your hand they are delivered. Every moving thing that liveth shall be meat for you, or food for you. Even as the green herb have I given you all things. But flesh with the life thereof, which is the blood thereof, ye shall not eat." Up until this point, God had not allowed for mankind to eat meat, to eat animal flesh. After the flood, God says that he now permits mankind to go ahead and eat meat. But one thing that's forbidden is that mankind is forbidden from drinking the blood. And I think there's also an emphasis on here when it says the flesh with the life thereof, meaning you should not eat something that's still living, and you should not eat or drink the blood. At this point in time, we've already realized that there was some kind of designation between clean animals and unclean animals. This distinction gets more specific in the book of Leviticus. But here in the book of Genesis, God is not forbidding the eating of unclean animals, but he is forbidding the eating or drinking of the blood. As we continue, he says, "And surely your blood of your lives will I require at the hand of every beast will I require it. And at the hand of man, at the hand of every man's brother will I require the life of man." He's getting into the subject of capital punishment. He says in verse 6, "Whoso sheddeth man's blood, by man shall his blood be shed. For in the image of God made he man." And so the whole entire premise, the whole entire foundation for the teaching of capital punishment, meaning if somebody takes a life, their life is to be taken as punishment for their taking of a human life. The whole basis for that is the fact that God created man in his own image. And when somebody takes a life, they're taking the life of somebody who is bearing the image of God. And here it says even for beasts. So if an animal takes the life of a person, that animal is to be put down. And so we see in Genesis chapter 9 the biblical institution of capital punishment for those who commit murder. And then he says, "Be fruitful and multiply, bring forth abundantly in the earth, and multiply therein," in verse 7. "And God spake to Noah," in verse 8, "and his sons with him, saying, And I, behold, I establish my covenant with you and with your seed after you." So this is where we get into the idea of the Noahic covenant. This is looked at, and for years and years and years, this had been looked at in Judaism as the covenant of God with all mankind. This is God's expectation for mankind. As we get further into the Mosaic covenant, Abrahamic covenant before that, those are specific to Israel. But here in Genesis chapter 9, we see the Noahic covenant, which seems to line up with what was taught in the book of Acts when it was discussed what should Gentile believers follow. Are they under the Mosaic law? Do they need to keep kosher? Do they need to do all of these different things? Should we put these laws and yokes upon them? And the answer was no. To look back to the Noahic covenant, that they should not drink blood, and that if any takes a life, their life should be taken as a punishment or a result of committing that sin. But God makes a promise to Noah, and he says, Verse 10, and with every living creature that is with you, of the fowl, of the cattle, of every beast of the earth with you, from all that go out of the ark to every beast of the earth, and I will establish my covenant with you. Neither shall all flesh be cut off any more by the waters of a flood. God is promising that he's never going to do this again. He's never going to destroy all life with a flood. He continues, neither shall there any more be a flood to destroy the earth. And God said, this is the token of the covenant which I make between me and you and every living creature that is with you for perpetual generations. This covenant is forever, for the rest of time. God makes this promise to Noah and his descendants. I do set my bow in the cloud, and it shall be for a token of a covenant between me and the earth. This is the sign of the Noahic covenant. This is the sign of God's promise to never again flood the earth. This is the origin of the rainbow. God says this is a sign between me and mankind. And when does a rainbow oftentimes appear? After it rains, or sometimes while it's even sprinkling. You can see a rainbow. This is a sign from God that he will never again judge the earth in the way that he did in Noah's day, when he destroyed everything with a flood. The promise, the token, the sign that God will keep his promise is the rainbow. I do set my bow in the cloud, and it shall be for a token of a covenant between me and the earth. And it shall come to pass, when I bring a cloud over the earth, that the bow shall be seen in the cloud. And I will remember my covenant, which is between me and you and every living creature of all flesh. And the waters shall no more become a flood to destroy all flesh. And the bow shall be in the cloud, and I will look upon it, that I may remember the everlasting covenant between God and every living creature of all flesh that is upon the earth. And God said unto Noah, this is the token of the covenant which I have established between me and all flesh that is upon the earth. No matter what this world teaches that the rainbow means today, what it really means is a promise from God to withhold judgment of a flood, that he would never again destroy the earth with a flood. As we continue, we read about Noah's sons in verse 18. It says, and the sons of Noah that went forth of the ark were Shem, Ham, and Japheth. And Ham is the father of Canaan. Canaan were those that began to be the inhabitants of the land that God would promise to Abraham. And it says, these are the three sons of Noah, and of them was the whole earth overspread. Do you know that you, watching this video right now, and I, and everybody else that you know, is a descendant of Noah, and more specifically, all of us are descendants of either Shem, Ham, or Japheth. Yes, our origins all go back to Adam and Eve, but at a later point in history, God destroyed everything and everybody except for those that were upon the ark, Noah and his wife, and Noah's three sons and their wives. Therefore, everybody that exists today is a descendant of either Shem, Ham, or Japheth. And it says in verse 20, and Noah began to be a husbandman, a farmer, and he planted a vineyard. And he drank of the wine and was drunken, and he was uncovered within his tent. Noah was inside his tent, and he was naked. And it says, and Ham, the father of Canaan, saw the nakedness of his father, and told his two brethren without. And it says, and Shem and Japheth took a garment, and laid it upon both their shoulders, and went backward, and covered the nakedness of their father. And their faces were backward, and they saw not their father's nakedness. Here, what Ham did is judged, and it's judged in his descendants who are Canaan. What did Ham do? He saw his father's nakedness, and then he went and told his two brothers, like, come and check this out. And they refused. Shem and Japheth refused, and they walked backward with a garment so that they would not see their father's nakedness and that they would cover him up. There's some things that result from this event. It says In verse 24, and Noah awoke from his wine and knew what his younger son had done unto him, meaning he saw him. There's nothing more implied here than he looked at his father's nakedness and he told his brothers to come and see. That is the sin of Ham. In verse 25 he says, and cursed be Canaan. A servant of servants shall he be unto his brethren. And he said, blessed be the Lord God of Shem, and Canaan shall be his servant. God shall enlarge Japheth, and he shall dwell in the tents of Shem, and Canaan shall be his servant. And Noah lived after the flood 350 years, and all the days of Noah were 950 years, and he died. Now, I'm not sure if you're aware, but this passage has been wrongfully used through the years to justify slavery, saying that Ham means dark, and so dark-skinned people, biblically, we have a justification to put them into slavery, which is ridiculous. That's a doctrine of demons, a doctrine of devils, as the New Testament says. What they're doing is twisting a passage, okay? It's not talking about Ham. And by the way, Ham does not mean dark, okay? Ham comes from a word meaning hot or warm. In modern Israel today, if you were going to say it's hot outside today, you would say Hayom Cham b'chutz, coming from the same word Ham, as we say in English, meaning warm or hot. This has nothing to do with skin color. And Canaan was the one that was judged, not Ham. And we see throughout the years, as this progresses in the biblical narrative, the people of Canaan were wicked people, full of all kinds of abominations, child sacrifice, and just great wickedness, violence. And so God is judging them to be servants of Shem and to be servants of Japheth. Much like with Jacob and Esau, okay, where it says that the older will serve the younger. It's a similar kind of concept. But this judgment has nothing to do with skin color, and it has nothing to do with justifying slavery. But as we continue, things start to progress. Noah here passes away at the age of 950 years, and he died. In our next episode of the podcast, we're going to look forward to getting into Genesis chapter 10. I know this was a shorter chapter, but I just wanted to get back into Genesis after taking so many breaks, having special messages and special content. I hope that this study has been a blessing to you, just to go through these verses. Nothing groundbreaking, nothing earth-shattering, but just wanting to share with you the scripture verse by verse, going through this foundational book, the book of Genesis. God bless you, and I'll see you in the next episode.
Thank you so much for listening to the New to Jesus podcast. You can go to our website, newtojesus.com. That's new, the number 2, Jesus.com. If you'd like to find me on social media, you can find me on Instagram and TikTok at DanielBergman99. And if you'd like to rate and review this podcast on iTunes, that helps us to get in front of more people to help them take their first steps as new believers in Jesus.